Alright, it's 10 o'clock here in Irvine, California, and let's go ahead and get this webinar started. Today we're going to have Tim Feher. For those of you who are familiar with the forums, will be no stranger to his amazing work. He will be showing us some of his tips and tricks on how he creates those jaw-dropping automotive renderings he does that he posts so frequently on our forums. So Tim, anything you want to say while you start?
No, I just want to say welcome to everybody, and let's get the party started. Okay, my name's Tim Feher. I'll be your guest presenter today, talking about automotive and how KeyShot produces photorealistic imagery. What I want to do is start from the beginning on what I do to a model before I import it into KeyShot. So what I'm going to do is import the actual model, and then I'll explain to you what I've done to it inside another 3D software. So when I import my models into KeyShot, you have a couple options here: center geometry, snap to ground, or keep original. I like to center the geometry and snap it to the ground. For size, I like keeping it at keep original size. Reason for that is if I decide to import another model inside the scene, I know that my two models will be relative to each other in size. If I click on the automatic, the two sizes are not relative to each other. They could be at different sizes. So I like to keep it at original. I also keep it at original, so if I have to do any updates to the model, I can just import the models, and I don't have to do any scaling to them, and I can get them into body position. So I'm going to do size as keep original. You pick your orientation depending on your software you use, and I hit import. So we're going to import this model. Alright, so here we go. We have this car inside KeyShot. It's centered and snapped to ground. You can tell by if you zoom out, you can see that your car is smack dab in the middle of your scene. Now if I zoom in on this vehicle, when I originally got this model, this whole thing was colored up like the car should be. You had the black plastic along the door sill here. In the front grille area, this was all black plastic. Lenses and things of that nature had glass, and inside there it had black plastic. So what I like doing to the models before I import is I like to separate all my materials. I don't like having, for example, black plastic in the front linked to my black plastic in the rear. It saves time for unlinking and linking parts inside KeyShot. Also, if I'm working on the front of the vehicle, I don't want to change anything in the back. So it just keeps me organized on what I'm doing to the model. Also, while I'm in KeyShot, it gives me the opportunity to manipulate these materials so they can react differently with each other. For example, if I had this grill piece as black plastic and this piece next to it as black plastic, which originally was, and these two parts were linked together, that was one solid piece of geometry. If I make it black plastic and the whole thing changes, and depending on my lighting, this might look like a black spot or a black hole. Keeping it separated now gives me the opportunity to change this material so I can see that part inside KeyShot. Otherwise, I'd have to either do another render or try to fix it in post. So I try to minimize as much post work as possible once I get it out of KeyShot. If I'm moving too fast, somebody needs to stop me because I start rolling, I start talking too quick, and I start moving. So what we have here now, as you can see, this car is broken out into all many different colors, so I have the opportunity to change my materials within KeyShot. Next thing I'll do after I import, I will look at the model, and I will look at the body relationship to the wheels. Sometimes this gap here is too big, and all I like to do is lower the body, or slam it, as some people call it. If I open up my scene here and open up the Ferrari, I have broken everything out to black, have the blackout, exterior trim, I have headlamps on their own, sheet metal, glass, badging, outside mirrors, outside door lock. So I've broken the model up even further than what originally was given to me, so I can move things around quickly. Now I want to drop the body. I'm not going to physically move the geometry now that it's inside KeyShot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this body by an animation. The reason why I do that is so if I have to update this model, I don't have to worry about what coordinates I use to drop the body. If I have it as an animation, my geometry is always the same no matter how I import it. It's the animation that's moving this body down. Seeing how I kept the body and the interior separated because I wanted to show you one of the new features inside KeyShot is you can actually manipulate this tree now. You can make groups, move things around. So normally I would have to do this animation, and I would put the animation on each one of these nodes as a copy animation, copy link animation. Now I don't have to do that. If you open up your scene tree, and I'm going to click it on the car main node, at the very bottom you have two options. You can add to a group or you can add a subgroup. What I'm going to do is add a subgroup to this node, and I'm going to call it body. So now we have a body node inside here with nothing in it. All you have to do is click on the nodes that you want and move it into the new subgroup that you created. What this warning tells you is that the update geometry may not work due to your moving the original pieces from how you imported it. That's fine with me. I don't believe, how I work is I create all my materials from scratch. I don't have a library of materials that I use over and over from one image to the next. So when I create a scene or an image, everything is done from scratch. Reason for that is your lighting is key to everything, and I can create materials and it looks great in one scene, but the moment I change the environment or the dome, all those materials might not look good anymore. So instead of making materials on top of materials, I just make everything from scratch. So now I'm just going to select everything I want in this one node and just drag and drop. Minus the wheels, no wheels. Wheels stay on their own. I'll drop those in there. So now you'll notice I have the body with the interior on its own node, and now I have the wheels by itself. So now I'm going to drop the body. I am going to add an animation. We'll just do a translation. On this translation, I know it's going to be in the negative, so let's try -2. And you see the body is lowering down on the car. Let me go into performance mode. So now I have the luxury I can slam it very far, just a little bit. I can go back to normal, but my geometry is not ruined on how I imported it. I think that looks pretty good. I'll leave it at that. Next thing I would do is add animations to my front wheels. So I have the opportunity to rotate my wheels. So I'll do that right now. Under the wheels, I've separated my wheels into the 4 different wheels: front left, front right, rear right, rear left. I will take my front passenger. I will apply an animation, a rotation. This rotation is going to be on the Y, and we'll just say 20 for now. That number will change depending on what angle we pick for the vehicle. As you can see, this one's rotating to the left, and if we want to rotate it to the right, you just put a negative in front of it, and now the rotation is opposite. I'm going to copy that animation, and I'm just going to paste it into my other front wheel. So there we go. We got the body lowering and the wheels turning on the animation, and my model is imported at the same coordinates. So what I like to do here, I don't need this long timeline, is I just take the timeline and I just scrunch them down. So we're looking like that. And that's all I need to do for animations. So I'll get rid of the animation bar. Alright, now that I have this, we have to make some decisions. We can talk about, you can create your angle now. I mean, what kind of scene are we going to be doing? Are we going to do a studio scene? Are we doing a scene, environment type of scene? For today, we're just going to keep it at type of studio type of scene. So we need to pick our angle of our vehicle. When picking an angle of a vehicle, it's always best, I feel, to start at a perspective of 60. And what that does is it kind of shows you the car in real form. There's no real distortions to the vehicle. And what I like to do is look at the vehicle on all sides and see where the shapes of the sheet metal. So we can tell on the hood. Let me go a little darker with my scene here. We have some character lines in this hood. You got a sweep going down here. You have a cutout through here. So I'm looking at all the different body shapes. You got something on the hood. You get this nice shape here, and this shape over here. Now this is going to be more for a product reveal. So I want to put this vehicle in an angle that shows as much body lines as possible in one shot, at the same time having it make it look good. So what I'll do is, let's do a front 3/4. What you're going to do, some things you want to look out for is your tangents. And what a tangent is for example, this mirror. If I rotate this car and I have the mirror just touching the B-pillar, that doesn't make for a good image, because that tangent makes the car look flat. So you want to make sure when you pick your angle that you're breaking all tangents of the model that you're using. So this shows us depth now. There's no tangents going around here. A lot of times I'll see angles where the tangents at the bottom, like right here. If you look at this mirror, the bottom of the mirror is just barely touching the molding of the window. We try to stay away from that as much as possible. So either you move your angle down a little bit or rotate it. Another thing that you see a lot is an extreme 3/4, but now that mirror goes right into the shape of the window. So now you can't tell how that window shape is. So again, from there, I'm always looking at my tangents when I pick an angle to make sure I try to eliminate as much as possible. Now, of course, there's some situations that you can't help it. It just is what it is, but you try to stop it as much as you can. So looking at this angle, I can see this body line here on the hood. I can see the scoop out of the hood. You see this little piece, this air intake over here. You can see the scoop on the side door. You can see that on the back panel, and you actually see a little bit on the roof. The only thing you don't see is this back end. So we could move it down just a little bit just to get a little shape. Try to see if you can get a nice shape rolling around the vehicle. Once I got that part done, I will go back to my perspective. We're at 60, which is kind of wide. To give you a little bit drama, you could add take some of the perspective away. Now, when using the perspective, you don't want to get too drastic, and you don't want to be too flat. You got to find that happy spot. So I think something of that nature should work good. With this angle, you're getting very close of a tangent right here at that B pillar. So I'm just going to rotate the car just a little bit. That should work. And now if you want to add a little bit more drama, you can put a little twist to it. And we'll call that done. So I'm just going to save the camera off. Call it front 3/4. I recommend you name everything as you go, because eventually sometimes it gets out of control and you can't remember everything that you've done. So for example, I should have named these animations. So that's your front driver wheel. I should have named these just so you have a quick reference, because sometimes you can get a lot of animations going and you'll lose track of what is what. But I only have 3, so we're good. So now that we have your angle set, what I'm going to do is materialize this vehicle up very quickly. Usually you materialize the car in 2 stages. Your first materializing is just getting colors down on the vehicle. Then you would add your lighting, and then after you add your basic lighting that you're going to be using for the shot, you go through and you materialize everything again due to that lighting. So very quickly what I'm going to do is just color up this vehicle at this angle. So if I go to my projects or my library, I use the default shaders that come with KeyShot. So I'll start with the black plastic. I usually go to the hard rough. I'm going to take that black, and I'm just going to hit all the areas where I know it needs to be black plastic. Now I've done some research on this vehicle on what colors should be where, so that's why I'm able to go through this quickly. But of course, and this is your image, you can make it any color you want. Another reason why I break everything up too, I probably should have said this in the beginning, is later, let's say they decide to change a color. Say this is not black plastic no more, it's going to be some type of graphite, but this stays black plastic. If these were all linked together, I would have to re-import my model. So now that I do have these all separated, I'm able to change these materials as I go throughout the year. So I'm going to add some more black plastic. Right now I'm just getting color down. I'll go back and tweak all these. Oh, don't do that. All right. Before I go too far, let me go back to my project. Let's talk about wheels for a minute. All right. With my wheels, what I like to do is I will usually separate the front face of a wheel. The reason why I do that is sometimes, depending on what material you use and the lighting scheme that you have, your wheels will get blown out. If you try to get rid of the blowout, then your pockets get dark and you lose your material you're trying to use. So if I break out this wheel as much as I can, I usually will break out the pockets too, so I'm able to control the pocket of the wheel, the front face of the wheel, and then the shape of the inside of the wheel on its own separate materials, so I can try to get the best result with one render. That I don't have to do multiple renders of this. So for example, if this was all one material and I put chrome on there, I have chrome bouncing from the inside of this pocket to the outside here, and this chrome's bouncing over there, and then I got the light blowing out the front face. It's very hard to control the shape of that wheel. So with having these as separate materials, I'm able to control each part of this wheel to get the best shape out of it. So that's why I try to break out my wheels as much as possible. I also will do is, let me hide this real quick. I separate the inner part of the wheel from the outer wheel. The reason why I do that is this part of the wheel, I just make a flat color, so there's no light influencing it. Because when you do a 3/4 shot, depending on your lighting, sometimes you can see the back wheel. You get like a white spot or a hot spot in your image, and you got to go back in there and Photoshop it out. Or you might get a hot reflection into the ground, and again, you don't want that there. So this is really not it's not important to the shot that this would be the proper material. So I just make these pieces black, so I don't have to worry about that in my image. So that's a good habit to get into, is cutting out the inner part of the wheels. That's why I just want to talk about that real quick before I start materializing these wheels up. So here we go. So let me get back to materializing this real quick. On this particular wheel, they use like a satin type of finish. I find metallic paint works great for that. Metallic paint works great on, I've used metallic paint for chrome. I use it for obviously metallic paint. You can do a lot of stuff with that metallic paint besides metallic paint. Another thing I do a lot is, just because something's chrome, it doesn't mean I use the chrome shader within KeyShot. Sometimes the metallic paint gives you the opportunity to get some of those midtones that you will lose sometimes depending on your lighting if you use chrome. So I use metallic paint a lot on materials. So just keep that in mind when you're working. You don't always have to use what reality tells you. We're artists. We want to manipulate and showcase the car or whatever you're doing in the best light. Another thing with wheels, if you're not doing a close-up shot of a wheel, I just make the rotor and the rotor and brake a metallic paint once again, and then I make it darker. I don't want to see the rotor being a hot spot with my wheels. Now if I'm doing a close-up, then I will make the rotor proper and puts a little bit of grooves in there and make it the proper metal that needs to be. But for most of the exterior shots, like three-quarter shots, things of that nature, you don't need to have all that detail on those rotors because it's lost with the rendering. Alrighty. Rubber right there. Okay. Oh, got lug nuts. Lug nuts for the most part are always chrome. Chrome, there it is, basic. Chrome inserts, chrome lug nuts. All right, great. Let's talk about paint. No matter what type of paint the car is calling for, I always use metallic paint. And the reason why I use metallic paint is because it gives me the most flexibility when creating the paint. With metallic paint, if I open it up, I usually take off the metal flake for the most part. Again, metal flake, the only time you're going to see metal flake is if you're doing a close-up of the vehicle. And when I mean close-up, it's going to be something of this nature. If you have an angle of this sort, then you would see some of that metal flake in there. And then you would use it. But most of our shots that we do is more of this nature. And technically, unless you're doing a bass boat, you don't really see that metal flake that much in the paint. So I usually just turn the metal flake down. Of course, I will use it when I have to, but for the most part, I turn it down so I don't have to deal with it right now. Now, if I'm using a metallic paint, then this works great, but let's say I'm using a PC paint, a pearl coat. As long as you keep these sliders close to each other, and these two colors close to each other, you're going to have a pearl coat type of paint. You increase the reflection. So I can make it look like the flat paint of that Ferrari. But it gives you that option to add that little bit of metallic in there just to give you some more shape of the body of the vehicle if you need to. If I use just flat paint, the flat paint shader, you don't have or the gloss we'll call it, you don't have no control over any other anything else of the paint except roughness and refraction. So whenever I need this type of paint, I still use the metallic because it gives me that option to tweak the paint just a little bit if I need to for the shot. So in a nutshell, I don't use the gloss paint. I always use metallic. Glass. Let's talk about glass. When doing the glass, I always like to try to put a little bit of color to the glass. I don't leave it pure white and clear. I like to knock it down in value, at usually about 90%. And I also like putting a little bit of color to it of that glass. Normally on this model I would have these two windows separated from each other. I apologize, I forgot to do that, so it's one piece. So when something like that happens, it drives me crazy. So I've been very busy, I couldn't get back to it. So if I had a shot and this happened to me and I need to get a shot out real quick, whenever in doubt, just make the windows darker so you can barely see the greenhouse inside there. And that usually creates still a good dramatic shot of your vehicle. But of course, if the client wants to see the interior, then you gotta fix the windows. A couple more materials here. I'll go back to that rough. Gotta hit a spot here on the B-pillar. All right, let's talk headlamps here. I've set this model up so I could turn the lights on if I needed to. So let me put some materials on so we can see the inside of these. Now, let me zoom in. With these headlamps, when I originally got this model, where you see gray and where you see this orange color, that was all one piece and all one material. Again, I want to give myself the opportunity to pull out these shapes of this headlamp. So I went in and I separated all these parts out. And then I created a separate material for them. So once I start lighting this vehicle, I have the opportunity to enhance this part of the light so I can see the shape. If I would have kept this all same plastic, I could lose this shape going on in here, and I think this is an important part of the light. So I wanted to make sure I was able to capture that within the rendering. I'm going to show this. This will all start making more sense once we put some lights on this vehicle, and you'll see what needs to get done to it. Plastic, basic. All right, so I'm going to put some black plastic there, some there. Now I know from reference this isn't chrome. This is more like a satin finish once again. So I'm going to go back to my trusted metallic paint. Put that on there. This is silver up here. This is black. That's a lens. That's a lens. Okay. I made a mistake there. I put glass on this lens. What I do for headlamps is I actually use the gemstones. Either diamond or crystal, and I'll use that for the headlamp part, and I'll show you why in a moment. I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to make this part inside here chrome. Oh my gosh. inside this headlamp, I put a little tiny sphere. Oh boy, here we go. There we go. Right here. Let's see if we can get that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this an emissive shader. I like using emissive shaders for the headlamps because it gives me a smoother transition of light. It's not so abrupt. So I use all emissives when I do my headlamp shots. I'm going to turn that up to 300. Now, just because the slider goes to 100 doesn't mean you can't type in a higher number if you need it. So if I turn on that gem that I just hid, don't hide. I'm not gonna hide. Now another thing you're going to want to do, the default settings in KeyShot is ray bounces at 6. To see what you're actually going to get on a ray trace, usually you ray trace at 16, that gives you a good result. You want to move this ray bounce to 16. What this ray bounce is what you see on your scene. This has nothing to do with your rendering itself. This is just what you see on your screen at the time. You keep it low for performance purposes, but if you want to see what this rendering is going to look like, you need to move your ray bounces at 16. I usually keep the ray bounces at 16 all the time. So the reason why I use a gemstone here for this headlamp lens, if we go inside this material now, I have some options. We have a refraction index, we have transparency, we have roughness, so what I want to do is turn the refraction up. That's going to bounce light around inside here. I usually turn the transparency up, and now I work with the roughness. Just a little bit. What I'm trying to do is create shape inside this lens. I don't want this lens to be all just one big light, because when it renders, it just looks like a ball of, just looks like a big white ball. There's no shape to the lens. So being able to use this gem, you're able to get some of these shapes inside the lens. Now this lens was modeled kind of flat. Usually I like this lens to have a nice bend to it, like a ball. But in this particular case, it's a little bit flatter than I would like. So if I zoom out and tone down my brightness in here, unfortunately I only have 4 cores running, so it's not going to res up very quickly. But as this reses up, you're still going to see a lot of shape inside this headlamp lens. It's not going to be a big white ball, so it won't look like this. Which is fine, but to make a good shot, I think you need to have that lens in there. And we'll do the same thing for these lenses. And those. So now that I have this car, for the most part, pretty much materialized up, we're getting ready to add some lighting to this and make this thing come to life. Let me show all parts. Oh, we got a couple pieces back here. Here's another thing on tailpipes. This model originally, let me go to performance mode so you can see this. Originally, this tailpipe was all one material. So the inner ring of the pipe and the outer ring was one material. What I did is gone through and I separated the inner ring. Now the reason why I did that is if we make this tailpipe chrome, you're going to have a lot of noise and it's going to be too bright inside this hole, and that you're going to have to retouch that out. So I break the inner parts of these pipes out so I can put a flat material in there so there's no light, and then the pipe looks like it's dark, like it should. So just let me put a material on there real quick. Again, on this particular vehicle, it's not chrome, it's more of that satin material again, so I'm going to go back to the trusted metallic paint. We'll put some metallic paint on here. Get out of performance mode. So now I don't have to worry about my pipes reading too bright if I do a rear shot. I have a nice flat paint or material inside there, and you're not getting the refraction from the chrome bouncing off each other inside those pipes. So that's always, I always do that. Alright, so that's that. One more thing I forgot to do in the beginning. Seating the car. Yes, we have it grounded on the ground, but it looks like the car the PSI on these tires are too high. So you can either go into your 3D modeling program and put some squish on the tires, or you can add a ground now inside KeyShot. So if I go to Edit, Add Ground, let's try that. Try it again, Add Ground. There it is. What you're going to want to do is double click on the ground, and you have options to clip geometry below ground. You want to select that. And then what we're going to do is move this ground just a little bit. And what that's going to do is going to help us make it look like the car has some weight to it and it's on the ground. I mean, obviously you ought to be careful. You don't want to go too much because then it looks like you got flats all the way around. So you just want to cut just a little bit off the tires. Go into performance mode so the shadow's not going to interfere with what I'm looking at. You just want to clip just a little bit of the tire to give it some weight. That's still too much. We got a flat Ferrari. There we go. So there we go. We have our car. You quickly put your materials on there. You have an angle that we're going to use, which would be the 3/4 front. And now it's time. We have animations on the tires. Now it's time to add our lighting scheme. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use everything from KeyShot. So if I go to the library, we're going to go to Environments, and let's go to their Outdoors. No. Nope. Indoors. Here we go. Let's use this one for example. Just going to drop it into the environment. Now we have our car lit. Obviously it's blown out. I'm going to go back to my project, go into the environment section, and I am going to put all these at the default setting of 1, size is whatever it came in at, height is at 0, rotation is at 0, and my settings, you have brightness of 1 and gamma of 2. That's your default settings out of KeyShot. I do that because I know I'm going to go into Lexion's HDR editor, and I want to do all these, whatever I do to the contrast and brightness on the editor side instead of over here. So what I'm going to do now is put, you should never light your car with a pure white background. You should have a mid-tone. This is my suggestion. I would not light a car with pure white background. I would use a mid-tone so you can see what's going on. So I'm going to go into the HDR editor, Lexion's, and what that does, it pulls up what environment you're using over here. This is where I would adjust my brightness and my contrast of the dome. On this one here, I don't want the dome to give me my white highlights. I want to put my own white highlights in. So I'm going to tone down the brightness of the dome a little bit. And let's see which way I'm going to go with contrast. Now what I'm looking for when I rotate this dome is I'm looking for a lighting that's showing me as much of these body shapes as possible of this vehicle. So it's going to show me the shape of the hood. It's going to show me this cutout inside the hood, this little piece here. It's going to show me this indentation in the door, this back quarter panel, and some of the hood. I'm going to try to find an angle that works as a whole. Let that res up for a second. There we go. This lighting here is giving me a little bit of highlights in the shape of the vehicle, the body lines. Now I'm going to enhance these lines to create the shot that I want. With this editor, you can control the contrast, the brightness, the blur of the background. I can actually make the background blurry so I don't have any hard shapes reflecting into the sheet metal. You can control the tilt of the dome, which is kind of nice sometimes, and the rotation. You can control the saturation of the dome, so we can make it so there's absolutely no foreign color, just black and white, or you can increase the saturation to add more blues. Leave it somewhere over in this area. Now let's add a couple lights. This is where the fun begins here. I'm going to add a pin light. Once you add a pin light, it puts it directly in the middle of the dome. You can actually set the highlight. And what you got to do is just hit the set highlight button down here. And now click on the vehicle where you want that light. I'm going to see if we can get some light on this back end. Just a little bit. Now if you can drag your mouse around or your cursor and you can move that light on this vehicle. So again, I want to hit it back here a little bit. You can hit done, and now I have the general area of where this light is on this dome. I can just fine-tune it now by moving the light up or down. Now what I like to do is layer my lights if I add a light. So my very first light is basically going to give me the shape or the highlight that I want, and what I will do is either blend it with the background, and what blending means is actually it's taking these pixels that are in that circle and enhancing them or brightening them up, and it's using the colors of those pixels. So if I increase that, it's actually using the dome light information to make this brighter. If I have blend off, it's just laying white light on top of the pixels that are already there. So you got to be careful on when you're doing your lighting. Do you want to lay light on top and have it look like there's lights placed on there, or do you want your scene to be brighter so you have that realistic environment inside reflecting on the car? So I'm going to hit blend on this one. I'm going to tone this down. That's just the starting of my light. Now what I'll do again is create another light, and I'll make it small. This one was at 30. I'm going to make this one 5 to start with, and I'm going to put it inside the light I just had there. And what that does is you can see on the model I'm actually getting highlights within that light that I put on top of there. I'll find a spot that I want that at. It might be too small. Let me enlarge that a little bit. And then let me do the fall off. The fall off is at 0.5, which gives you a little hard edge. You can set the fall off to 0 and it makes that edge of the light softer. And of course, you can add it a little bit more. You can make it 2, and it makes it really soft. And what I'm doing here is I'm just layering my lights on top of each other to see what kind of look or feel I can get instead of having it just one light doing it all. We'll add another light. We need, so I'm looking at this, we need some more light to wrap around the vehicle here. So we'll add another light, pin light. I can set highlight just so I know generally where it's at on the HDR. Go back here, so we're in this area. I'm going to increase the brightness, try to, there we go. So this process here, you could be doing this for hours, just fine-tuning your lighting, adding little pin lights, moving stuff around. One of the last steps, I'm not going to go through all that, but one of the last steps I will do when lighting is add little pin lights. So I'm just going to add a pin light. Again, and I'm going to make this very small, like 3. So it's a very, very small pin light. And then I will increase the brightness all the way up. And what that will do for us is, let's just say I want to try to get a little pin light of highlight along this edge. I'm going to click in that area. So there's that little light that is created. It gives you that white highlight. And now I'm going to try to move that around. See if I can get that edge. So with that pin light, it's giving me, it's pronouncing this edge right here. And then I'll make another light. Where's it at? Again, those are very small lights. Set highlight, maybe we'll see if we can get something over on this side. And this doesn't always work. I mean, you're really hunting and pecking, trying to find the right spot of the dome that gives you the highlight that you're looking for. I mean, this gives me a highlight on this edge, but it's giving me obviously all these other highlights, so that's not going to work for what I want it to do. We'll call them little kiss lights. So that's one aspect that I will use and work the image. Now another thing we can do is we have a ground on here. We can actually have that work to our benefit. So what I'm going to do is I am going to change that ground material to, let's say, a plastic. Now you can see now the ground's actually reflecting into the car. And let's make the ground darker. And let's add a texture to this. So if I go into the library, we'll go to textures. I gotta peel this off, there we go. You can pick any type of ground. Let's say we use this and put it on the color. I'll change the planar map. There we go. You can add ground, add a material to the ground, and now that ground's reflecting into your sheet metal. That's one way to look at it. You can pick There's a really nice one in here. It's called Hockey Rink or something. Let's see. There it is, Hockey Ice. Let's use this one. And drop that on. So what I'm going to do now is I don't want this to repeat itself. So I'm going to turn the repeat off. It's going to be a planar map. I am going to pick a position. Increase the size. Let's see. It's 20, 50. All right, so we have a hockey rink on there. What I'll do now is put an opacity map on top of this ground, and what that's going to do is going to give me a soft edge around it. So there we go. I call it an alpha ground. I'm going to put that on the alpha. All right, perfect. Make that 50. So I'm going to pick a position of that directly underneath the vehicle. I'm going to unsync it. Now we're going to increase the size of that alpha. Of course, that doesn't help when you put an alpha on top of your color. Let me get back to that hockey rink. All right, that's 50. All right. What is going on? What I'm trying to do is put the ground, have a little silhouette underneath, but I don't know what this is over here. What is going on here? Let's try this again. Sorry. Add ground. Turn that to a plastic, or it could be even metal. There we go. We'll do some metal. Add some roughness. I'm going to put an opacity map so I can get this hard edge off of the ground. Okay. I do not want it to repeat. So I turn the repeat off. I turn the sync off. I don't want to use a box map. I want to use the planar Y. And now I'm going to move that map so it's directly underneath the car, which it looks like it's already there. I'm going to increase the size of this opacity map so it grows underneath the vehicle. That's 80, let's go 100. Okay. Now the reason why I like doing that is if I go into the environment and change the color of the background to more of a darker color, I have a nice little mood lighting, like a spotlight hitting the car. And then now the background just blends into the ground. I don't have that hard edge inside there. Also, you can put any type of background behind here, and this ground just kind of becomes part of the background, which is nice too. So let me need a bigger screen. I think that's my problem. I don't have enough real estate to move everything around here. Alright, so let's put that on there now. I don't want these two linked together. I want to be able to control my color and my opacity map. So that's why I have the sync and the repeat checked off on this and on this. So I can manipulate both those maps separately from one another. Again, I need to go to the Y. We'll make this, we'll say 50. I'm going to change this to a plastic. There we go. Brightness, tone it down. There. Now I can decrease the roughness, increase the refraction, so I can start getting a, hopefully a ground reflection. I'm hoping. Well, am I missing something here? Just in any case, I was hoping to get some ground reflection from the car bouncing into the ground. It's not happening though. I should be able to get it.
Is your global illumination turned on?
No. Let's see.
And let's see.
It's there. It's just subtle.
Is your specular color on the ground plane set to black?
Yeah. Thank you. There it is. Sorry. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I'm new to this. No, it's a joke. So yeah, so now you can control your reflection of the vehicle. You can have it like a mirror, like or you can rough it up. It all depends on what look you're going for. Now again, I'm not doing a full scene showing the vehicle all done up. This was more of a just showing you some different things that you can do with the vehicle and the ground in the background. One other thing I'll do with these vehicles is I would add IES lights at the end for that extra added pop. So I just want to do that real quick because I think we're getting to run out of time here soon. So KeyShot has these wonderful IES lights, which I love. What I'm going to do is import a sphere. There we go, sphere. Import. All right, I'm going to move this. Where is it? There it is. So let's move the sphere up. And let's make it a little bit bigger, so at least we can see. Now it doesn't matter the size of the geometry that you use for an IES light. I'm just making it bigger so I can actually see it a little easier when I move it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on that sphere. I'm going to change the material to an IES light profile. I have downloaded a IES lights. You can find them online. There we go. I have a little small pack here. And let's see. I don't know exactly which one I use. I usually just start picking stuff, and whatever one actually looks good, that's the one I keep. So I don't have a favorite, let's say. But there you go. We have a light shining down on the ground now. Let me move that around. What's really nice about these IES lights is I like the hard shadow it gives sometimes on the vehicle. It really sets a whole different mood to what your lighting is. Now, the trick with these is you want to try to use the edge of the light, not so much the center of this light, because it's so intense. So if you just rotate this light, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it so it's going to be using the edge of the light. Move it up. So you usually never use the light directly like how you see it here onto the vehicle. You're trying to find a light that you can use the edge of the light here that's reflecting back into the vehicle. That's how I try to use them as much as I can. So I move that out a little bit. Turn it back on. It just gives you a couple extra highlights in there. It really brings that wheel to life. That's one way we'll use them. Another one is I add another light there, import. Again, these lights here, this could take you an hour or two really moving them around, trying different IES profiles out to get exactly what you're looking for. But you can get there with them. It's going to take some time. The beauty, I always tell everybody, it's not so much, it's not the program's a big help, but it's really the person that is behind that computer. That how far do you want to push the software to give you what you're looking for? I like being challenged. You know, hey, this doesn't work, can you get this working type of stuff, and that's the kind of things I like doing, is taking that software and pushing it to the limits and making it work for you. So here we go. We got so I'm using the outside of that light to give me these highlights across this grille area. That's why I wanted to kind of show you how it's not a direct light onto the vehicle, but I'm using the edge of the lighting of the light itself. Now the reason why I separated all my materials or my parts out in separate materials is, for example, right now if I would have left all this as black plastic, I have no control over these pieces. So I can go now inside my materials and tweak them even further to give me the look I'm looking for on my model. Make it rougher. I can go inside here now, which this was connected to all this black plastic. I can actually make this very flat, and now as you can see now we have a nice depth of this this front grille. I mean, you can show a little bit of that grille, but again, that grille is not a very important part of this vehicle at this particular, for this shot, so I would not try to enhance it or even really see too much of it. When you're lighting your vehicle, the things that you're looking for is you don't want your sheet metal to blend into each other with the different turns. So for example, this lighting here, I have this face of the sheet metal and it rolls into this area. These two colors, or these two faces, are blending into each other, so you don't see the real shape of the vehicle. So if I see that, that's when I would go back into my HDR editor and I would add light to this area. I'm going to move this around so I can try to pull off those two shapes from each other. And again, it doesn't have to be a very strong light. I keep it strong in the beginning so I can see where my light's at. Maybe. Come on, there you go. And we'll make it a little bit smaller. And then the brightness, I try to use the color more than I use the brightness over here. I'll actually make this light darker. Instead of having it as white, I make it a darker light. And all I'm looking for right here is trying to get separation between these two faces on the car of the sheet metal. You kind of work around your vehicle that way. So in the end, when you have your car in your angle, you're able to see all the different shapes of the car. Come on. So this is not the lighting I would do for this vehicle, but let's just say it was. What I would be doing now is going through this vehicle and looking in the areas where I see two shapes falling into each other. Like there's not a lot of separation going on with this hood scoop, the scoop of this shape of this hood. So I would try to put a light up here to give me more shape in this area. Would add some light to these wheels so I can see more pop to the wheels. I would make sure all these shapes inside the side of this vehicle is all broken out so we can see everything, how this car is designed. This face here is blending into the side. Again, I would try to enhance this, either light it or make it darker, one or the other, but show the different transitions of the sheet metal. And you just kind of work your way around the vehicle in that fashion. That's all I have for right now. I want to thank everyone for showing up. I want to thank Lexian for asking me to do this. I'll be more than happy to do another one and go deeper into a final image. But this is basically a rough look into how I look at putting a vehicle inside a KeyShot and creating a image from it. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim. If there's any other questions, let me see if there's any we can look over real quick.
Yes, you can rotate your wheels without an animation. I don't know how long ago that was asked. But again, once you move your geometry, after your import, it's not the original geometry. So if you import something new, you lose that transition or that translation of that rotation. That's why I use all my moving of the vehicle by animation, so I don't lose my original XYZ 0 point of my geometry.
Another good question is, how do you choose IES over pen light?
A pin light is, how I see it, is the light is focused all at the same intensity. There's no fall off to a pin light. So once you have a pin light on, it's 100% all the way around. There's no fall off. So let me add a couple different IES lights so I can explain the fall off a little bit better. Let's see. Let's use this one for example. On a pin light, this would be a very small dot, and it would be pure intensity of pure light flying off of this thing. With the IES light, you have a strong center, which is true, but you can see the light falling off as it gets farther away from that center point. So this light looks like, to me, it has a strong ring right here, then it has a fall off and it gets a little bit darker, and then it has the bulb itself. So there's 3 stages to this IES light. So if I go in here and change that light to a different one, let's see, edit material, I'm going to pick a different IES light. Let's pick Ballard. That light You can see the light is strong on the edges. It's dark in the center of the light. So those profiles have different ways that light is being emitted from in the scene. So that's the difference between a pin light and an IES. The pin light is constant. It's the same one. It's the same intensity at all times. You have no control over what the light does as it stretches across an object.
Someone's asking about tires and sidewalls. Is that something you can address quickly, or do you?
Yes. I'm sorry. I totally skipped that, didn't I? Okay. Tire and sidewalls. One of the things that can make and break an image is tires and your wheels. You can have a beautiful body with great lighting, but if your wheels look fake, then the whole image is shot. Then it looks CG. What I have here is a bunch of tires, right? I have actually already UV mapped the tires. So let me go into Photoshop real quick and let me show you how I go about doing a generic type of sidewall. What I have here is the actual UV map of the sidewall. I gotta move some stuff around here. I have something that I created. It's called a serration. And what that is just a bunch of lines that I made it in Photoshop. Okay, that's the serrations of the sidewall. It's just generic. And I also have cut out Goodyear. And this is what I use just for a generic tire. It just says Goodyear on the top, Goodyear on the bottom, and that's what I would use for my tire sidewall. Now, when you use a bump is anything that's pure white on your image is going to be the highest point of the bump. Anything that's black will be the lowest point of this bump. So I would create a bump using just this right here for my my sidewall. And I've already saved this out, so I'm not going to save it here. And then I'll apply them onto the model. Next thing I would do is create a specular map. Now, a specular map is a little bit different when it comes to your whites and black. A specular map, let me open up that map so you can see it. Now, what a specular map is, anything that's pure white on that map will have the pure reflectivity of that material, how shiny or how dull it's going to be. Anything that's pure black on that map is going to be a very dull. There's absolutely no light information emitting from that material. And then anything between black and white will have different ranges of light reflecting off of that material. So with this specular map I did here is I did a very dark inside, and it just kind of fades out a little bit on the edges, as you can see here. And then I took the bump map and I laid it on top, and we darkened it up a little bit. Okay? So that's giving me a couple different ranges of light and dark. So if I go onto my sidewall here, and let's apply the bump first. Sidewall bump. I'm going to hit open. Okay, I UV map these, so I'm going to go to UV coordinates. UV coordinates is if the part's already UV mapped, it'll use the UV map coordinates of that part as it was imported. So I'm going to hit that. Now, let me zoom up in here. This map right now is black and white. I don't have any midtones in there. And a lot of times I see sidewalls, they look like this. They look like pencil lines that have gone through here. What you need to do is be careful. Let me flip the map so it reads properly. There we go. It's all about this bump height. Too much is not good. Too little is no good. You got to find that happy spot. And I find the lower you go with your bump map, the more the better the tire looks. You have more gradations of light bouncing off of it. As you can see right here, I'm going to let that res up. You can actually see some highlights already bouncing into the sidewall at a low bump rate height. If I go back to that 1 default, you start losing all that white highlight going through your bump. So be very careful when you use your bumps that you don't put the bump height too high, because you're going to lose everything that you need for it. It's going to be gone. So we're going to keep that low. 1.5 or 0.15. That's giving us the bump. Now what I'm going to do is add the specular map that I created for it. Okay. I can control how bright I want this bump to read on this sidewall now. So let me increase the brightness of this and see if we can see let that res up for a second. With this bump map, anything that was white on here, you're seeing the light information hitting your part from your HDR. And that's why you're seeing these little highlights of white going on the tips of these serrations. As this reses up, you can see it come in more and more. You have a nice dark tone here, which gradates to a lighter tone, like how the light's hitting it. And down over here, it's darker and goes to lighter. And you can see your Goodyear on your map. Another thing I will do with my maps is I actually do, my color is not black. I actually do a transparency. I do a PNG 24, and I will save it off that says Goodyear on it, or whatever tire company that you're using, and you make this Goodyear white. I leave it white because that gives me the opportunity inside KeyShot to either make my lettering white or make my lettering black. I'll show you that. I just got to enable this. So then I would save this off as a PNG 24, which I've done. So I'm going to apply that now on the color map. Okay, perfect. It comes in as white, but I am actually going to make this brightness very, very faint. 0.0, we'll start with 0.03. So my lettering doesn't stay pure black. There's a little bit of gray tone in there, and I have the opportunity now to adjust that depending on the lighting and angle of the car. So if I zoom out now, and just let this res up, you'll see that these tires have a nice, we'll say, highlight or feel to them. It's all about your black and white in the midtones. Just remember, specular, anything pure white will give you the true reflectivity of your material. Anything that's black on that map will make there's no light information emitting from it. On your bump map, anything that's white is the highest point of the bump. Anything that's pure black is the farthest point from the camera, we'll say, of your bump. Anything in the middle will show that gradation of the height of the bump.
Okay, I think that about wraps it up for this webinar. Tim, thank you so much for enlightening us on your techniques. It's amazing just watching you work. If there's any other questions, please email support@luxion.com, and we will see you again soon. Thanks.
For everybody, my door is always open. If you want to contact me on the forums, if you have any questions, things of that nature, I'm always open to talk and discuss if you need any help with anything or just want to talk.
Awesome. Thank you again, Tim.
Thanks.